Mark Carney is meeting world leaders and positioning Canada on the global stage, but many Canadians are asking a simple question: who's minding the store at home? And that is the question of the day. Who is minding the store here at home? Eddie, any thoughts?
Well, we kind of started talking about it, with Prime Minister Carney being in Asia right now. Who is minding the store? Well, I guess it comes down to what exactly needs attention, and does he have a cabinet that can continue running the country while he's off attending to important matters? Do we have a functional government at this particular point in time dealing with all the issues globally that are facing us? I think we've been doing a pretty okay job so far. Has Prime Minister Carney actually delivered on every single promise that he made during his campaign and the promises he's made during the leadership debate? No. Has he started working on all the elements that he brought up in both his campaign and the leadership debate? Yes. Are they finished? No. Will they be finished? I certainly hope so. So I think all of this goes into, Gary, everything, and it's not just Prime Minister Carney. Every leader of the world, their attention has been diverted away from the important matters of their citizens and issues in their own countries, because they have to contend with El Presidente down south, at least us here in North America. Economically, the entire planet has to deal with El Presidente. And on top of that, Europe has to contend with what's happening over to El President's best friend there, Mr. Putin. So the world's leaders, as opposed to evolving the economies of their countries, continuing relationships with other countries, solidifying those relationships, building economies, building partnerships, all of that, I'm not going to say it's playing second fiddle, but room and time has to be made to deal with the threat of the United States of America and what's coming from Vladimir Putin in terms of his escalations in the Ukraine and what that means for the rest of Europe. So I kind of put Prime Minister Carney on the same level as every other leader around the planet. They have a lot on their tables right now. And you know what? Do I want to be selfish? Absolutely. Mr. Carney, stop dealing with everything else that's going on in the world and deal with us in Canada. But I know that would be foolhardy, and that would actually be detrimental to our country in these very trying times, Gary. That's where my thinking is right now.
Well, Carney's coming under some criticism now about the amount of globe-trotting that he has been doing.
Yeah.
And I would suggest it's fair criticism. You have to balance things out here, because here at home, we have a growing affordability crisis. Yes, you have these positive factors. So, for instance, there was a survey out last week or earlier this week indicating that rents in Canada fell month over month last year for the first time in a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that when you lump it all together, that may be true, but I would suggest that it has not hit the Montreal area yet.
For sure.
Every month last year, where rents dropped.
Yeah.
I've noticed in the very tail end of 2025 and coming into now the new year, that when you look at some of the listings, the prices have leveled off, and some of them have gone back to what they were 5 years ago when we first moved here.
Mm-hmm.
It's slow but sure, but there's so many new units coming online right now. Like there's a glut of new units.
Right.
So And I don't, first of all, like a place like Montreal, where not only did the provincial government try to cut down on the number of students coming in when they raised the tuition fees, and the federal government's cut down on the number of foreign students, you're not getting that influx of those students every year now. And that's going to go on for a while. That's going to hurt. And that's, in major centers with major universities across the country. The average person, though, even if their rent has leveled off, you're not going to see a rent decrease, that's for sure. When you go to sign your lease next year, it ain't coming down, but maybe it's not going up. But even at this stage, even like a 3 or 4% increase can make or break a family that's struggling with the high cost of food. And that just seems to just every week, every time you go into a supermarket or order online, the price keeps going up. And even though you're not ordering as much as what you did the previous week, you're still paying more. So prices are going up there. There's this food in particular, and then utility bills. Utility bills in a lot of provinces are going sky high as well. So there is an affordability issue. Now, home prices are coming down, but when you've got everything else that's going on, still eating away at your ability to save for a down payment, it's not going to happen. And yet, last year we had all of the talk about the new housing and everything, public housing and affordable housing. And of course, Prime Minister and his office got themselves in trouble with the fake homes for the housing announcement in Ontario. Which, something like that also shatters trust.
It does.
Because you're sitting there as an average Canadian, hardworking Canadian, who is worried about their job because if the economy starts to slow down, there will be layoffs. And so you're worried about your job. You're struggling to make ends meet, and then you've got a dog and pony show like that was arranged for the rollout of this new housing development in the modular homes as part of the affordable homes program, and it was all make believe.
Yeah.
And who paid for it? There's the company said, well, we had money in it, or they covered some costs in kind or whatever. But there was still a bill, and I just can't remember now how much it was just off the top of my head, but there was a bill that ended up in the federal government's hands. For what? I don't think we've received any kind of a reasoning for what. And it kind of reminds me of the old days of the Trudeau Liberals. Of course, there's a lot of hangovers in the cabinet, although Carney's slowly weeding them out, or they're leaving on their own. Or maybe they don't like what they're seeing behind the scenes. I don't know, but they're slowly going.
Well, that's a challenge that has to be continuously thrown on the floor during question period, because I'd like to know too what the hell happened there.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Exactly. So you have all of that. So yes, he has to go, and a lot of people are concerned about him going to China to try and open up some new trade routes. I get the fact that it's a huge market that we can't ignore. And, the old saying is, keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer. But he's going over there, and shaking hands and smiling and, you know, the usual thing, press the flesh kind of thing. But can we trust China? And think about this. If Alberta's referendum goes through, that there's a referendum campaign, and if the PQ wins here in Quebec, and within the next year or so we're into a referendum campaign here, with social media and the bad actors in Russia and China, you know, interfering with our political process through social media platforms, is that where we really want to be dealing? I'm really torn on this trip. I know it's a huge market. I know that. But again, I just come back to, can we really trust them in the long run?
Yeah. Well, I guess it kind of goes to, who can you trust these days?
Well, that's the other side of it.
Yeah, who can you trust these days? And if you can't try to trust someone some of the time, maybe not all of the time, how do you conduct business? I mean, this is no different than two companies negotiating on how they're going to be doing business with each other. Okay, fine. You come up with a 1,000-page document that outlines the contract, and this is how you're going to work on it. Well, what happens if one company decides not to honor the contract? Well, you sue them, right? What do you do on an international stage? You shrug your shoulders. So you know what, Gary, you're absolutely right. It's a big risk dealing with the United States now. It's maybe a little bigger risk dealing with China, but I guess you have to sit down and weigh the pros and cons of actually jumping into the sack with the Chinese in terms of, at least on a short-term basis, to get a kickstart in the economy where we continue to wean ourselves away from American interests, and get a more global economy, a global dependency, as opposed to all our eggs in one basket. So I don't know, Gary. It's nowadays it seems to be a risk anytime you deal with the big players of the world, that they can just arbitrarily say, no, we're gonna change your mind, and that's the end of that. You know, your problem. So yeah, I agree with you, Gary. There's a big risk of this, but I guess maybe the bigger risk is, well, what if you don't? Right.
And then we come back around, though, to the fact that there's that risk, but you have the risk at home as well, because unemployment was up last month again, even though X number of thousands of jobs were created. What sectors really benefited from those jobs? Were they full-time jobs? Were they regular full-time jobs? Were they Christmas end of year blitzes? What were they? It's coming to a point, again, as I said earlier, trust. And I think the government's trust level is pretty thin with the average Canadian at the moment. We've all been willing, given the trade wars and everything, we've all been willing to give Carney and the Liberals a lot of runway.
Right.
But I think they've hit the point where like when you're rolling down the runway, there's a certain point you hit, and you have to take off.
Right.
You gotta go because you don't have enough runway to stop. So I think the Liberals are nearing that point, and again, it comes back to leadership. Mark Carney's leadership on the world stage in renewing our position on the world stage has been top-notch. However, I think, again, as I said earlier, it's time that he starts balancing it a bit more and coming home and paying attention to what's actually happening here at home.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I see it coming from, because, you know, global meetings are great. They matter, no question. But, you know, the average Canadian still wants to know, as far as, is leadership reacting to what's happening in the world events, or leading on life at home? Are they leading
Yeah.
on life at home? Are they?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Gary. It's been one-sided, more on the international stage as opposed to on the domestic stage. So I get exactly where you're coming from. As myself as a Canadian, I know as you, it's like, okay, I know it's important what you're doing out there, but it's time to turn your attention to us a little more, or a back and forth, like you were saying, a better balance, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go to the comments again. And, oh, Serge. I was going to say that. Who can you trust these days? Okay, thank you, Serge. And let's go to Joe. It's quite the quagmire, isn't it? You don't trust China, but look at what's happened with our so-called friends and neighbors to the south. Canada needs to diversify and make the best deals possible. No question, Joe, and I think I totally support that. I just think we have to be very cautious with this particular character in China in that whole approach. Number one, because there's a lot of bad blood there. Look at the two Michaels, and you know, you can go on with the Chinese, so-called Chinese police stations here in Montreal and Toronto and in Vancouver. You know, and eventually he's going to be traveling to India again. Our relationship with India over the last number of years has not been that great, and for what seems to be reasonable concerns as to what's happening there. But again, there's a large market, a huge market that needs to be tapped. Okay, and Monel comes back with, if we don't have an economy, it will hurt Canadians, so he has to make sure trade is solid. I don't disagree with that. I guess what I'm saying is we have to balance it more. He has ministers who can go and at the very least spend more time doing some of the face-to-face stuff. And then when, you know, like in the corporate world, Eddie, like once you get all of the contracts lined up, you bring the CEOs in to smile and press flush in front of the cameras and sign the contracts, and everybody goes away happy, right? So I just think that there needs to be a better balance, and I would suggest that Canadians are starting to wear a little thin on all of the traveling, and not a little more of the Prime Minister's face here in the country talking about the affordability, grocery prices.
Yeah.
Where is the housing? The affordable housing, you know, down payments. Here's something. If you're building a lot of new homes and supposedly making them affordable for young people starting out, instead of charging GST on the new home, why not just waive it for people in a wide income bracket? Because in a lot of cases, you start getting into some serious money if you're paying GST on a new house or a new condo. You know, it's a fairly significant. sometimes exceeds the amount of a down payment that you have to put down, for God's sakes.
True. Well, and in some provinces or municipalities, like in Montreal, we get the welcome to the area tax on top of that.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly. Exactly. These are all roadblocks to people getting into decent housing. Why we keep talking about, oh, we're, removing the roadblocks and it starts at the municipal level and everything. Well, again, it's leadership. Yeah, I'm sure it brings in a fair number on the bottom line in the run of a year as far as the GST on new homes. But the other side of it is, why is it just on new homes? Why isn't it on every time you sell a house?
Mm-hmm.
Why isn't there GST on every sale on a house?
Yeah.
It's a good, right? It's goods. And there's, that's what it is, goods and services tax. Why isn't it on resale?
Yeah. Looks pretty discriminatory to me.
It is. It really is discriminatory. And again, to me, it's a roadblock for younger couples who are starting out. They scrape and they put together a down payment only to find out that, oh, we're going to have to look at a different house and lower our expectations, and maybe end up with our first home not
Right.
checking all of the boxes.
And that's the sad part, Gary. I mean, you have a first-time homeowners. They make the purchase, and by the time they move in, they're house poor. There isn't much else left for anything else that, So yeah, it's something that definitely needs to be fixed, Gary. On top of the affordable housing issue, the homeless issue, and all that. I mean, that all ties into each other, and it's not just in Canada. The rest of the world's got the same problem. There's got to be some ways to be able to rein in the horses and make things more affordable above and beyond just the housing. You mentioned before, there's the groceries and the utilities. They just keep on going up, and we see very little for it. So yeah, absolutely, something needs to be done. And you know what? Why not Canada be the leader in the world in demonstrating a model that other countries can actually look at? We've done very little of that recently. We talked about quite adequately during the Trudeau reign of Canada no longer being that country to look up to. We've done very little the last 10 years, maybe even the last 15 years. We've done very little on the world stage. You know what? Can you imagine we came up with a model for affordable housing that works for our people in Canada? That other countries can actually look up to. I'd love to get back to that stage. And you know what? We cannot wait another 4 years. Carney's got to do something soon, within this 4 years. Otherwise myself, along with a lot of Canadians, will be looking at casting our vote elsewhere. But you know what? I still have faith in our present government. I don't have faith in the opposition anymore to hold the present government under check. Hopefully that's going to change within the next few weeks, and see we can get some progress made on this. We need something done for affordable housing. I'm retired. You're retired. I can't afford a 5% rent increase. I mean, that's a killer.
Yeah. Oh, it is. No doubt about it. So we'll wrap up this segment, Eddie, with, going back to the question I asked earlier, and that is, at every level, right? Inside Canada, at the kitchen table, and on the world stage. The question is the same. Is Canada leading or just reacting?